the rival city of Tyre. These drastic measures ensured, at least for a while, peace on the Mediterranean coast, and left Esarhaddon free to deal with the serious problems that had arisen along the northern and eastern borders. At the beginning of his reign, another nomadic people from southern Russia, the Scythians, had crossed the Caucasus and joined the Cimmerians, already established in Asia Minor, Armenia, and Iran. The arrival of these warlike tribes, with which they were closely related, gave a new impetus to the predatory activities of the Cimmerians. In 679 BC, they suddenly broke through the Taurus Mountains, threatening the Assyrian garrisons in Tabal and causing some unrest among the vassal rulers of Cilicia. Esarhaddon swiftly counterattacked, trampled upon the neck of the Cilician rebels, and cut with the sword Tushpa and his hordes, forcing them to retreat beyond the Kizil-Irmak River. Cimmerians and Scythians then fell upon the kingdom of Phrygia, which they overthrew 3 years later with the help of the Urartians. Happy to see this human flood diverted from his own kingdom, Esarhaddon made peace with the Cimmerians, gave an Assyrian princess in marriage to the Scythian chief Bartatua, the Pertithies of Herodotus, and repelled a weak attack from Rosas II of Urartu. On the eastern side of the Armenian Massif, however, the repeated efforts made by the Assyrians to obtain tribute from the Mannai, now under strong Cimmerian and Scythian influence, met with failure, despite claims to the contrary in the royal inscriptions. To the southeast of Lake Urmia, the vast Iranian plateau was occupied by the Medes, in theory under Assyrian control, but in fact independent, and this was the time 680 BC, when Kishathrita, son of Diaku, was uniting their numerous tribes under his authority. Esarhaddon did all he could to prevent the development of a situation whose imminent effect was to cut down the supply of Median horses to the Assyrian army, and whose remote consequences were perhaps dimly foreseen. Several raids of cavalry were launched across the plateau as far as the desert to the east of Teheran, and 3 important princes of the Medes, who had begged Esarhaddon's help against their own vassals, were placed under Assyrian protection and imposed regular tribute. Further south, a series of successful operations in the central Zagros and an alliance sealed with the Gambulu, an Aramaean tribe settled on the left bank of the lower Tigris, aimed at forming a barrier of buffer states between Elam and Mesopotamia. But Esarhaddon struck an even greater victory when, after the death of Humba Haldash, he succeeded in putting on the Elamite throne a prince friendly to Assyria, Bertaki, 675 BC. While obtaining by a remarkable combination of force and diplomacy a precarious peace in Babylonia and Phoenicia and along the 2,000 kilometers of his northern and eastern frontiers, Esarhaddon was preparing for his great project, the conquest of Egypt. Already in 679 BC, he had already captured the city of Azrazani on the border of the Brook of Egypt. Then he had endeavored to win the friendship of the Arabs, by now settled in large numbers in the Syrian desert, since without their cooperation, no large-scale military campaign in the southwestern regions of the empire could be undertaken. For example, he had given back to its former ruler, Hazael, the stronghold of Adumatu, which Sennacherib had conquered, together with his gods, and when a certain Abu revolted against Hazael's son, the latter received rural military support from the Assyrians. Finally, in the spring of 671 BC, when he felt all the frontiers secure and the Arabs friendly or neutral, Esarhaddon led his army into Syria, the first step on the road to Egypt. An attempt was made to besiege Tyre, whose king had revolted, but the city resisted, and no time was wasted in trying to capture it. Marching southward, the Assyrians reached Rapihu, Tel, Rafaq, south of Gaza, and crossed the Sinai Desert, where they saw, among other dreadful things, 2-headed serpents, whose attacks spelled death, and green animals, whose wings were bat After 15 days of considerable hardship, they entered the green land of Egypt, despite the strong resistance offered by the pharaoh Tarikwa and his army. The conquest of this vast country took surprisingly little time. But Egypt was not to be an easy prey. 2 years later, Tarikwa came back from the south, where he had fled, recovered Memphis, and fomented a rebellion against the Assyrians in the Nile Delta. Esarhaddon was, once again, on his way to Egypt when he fell sick in Haran and died 669 BC. 3 years before, in May 672 BC, in the presence of the army and nobles of Assyria, foreign ambassadors, and representatives from subject countries, he had solemnly proclaimed his son, Ashurbanipal, the legitimate heir to the throne, and appointed another of his sons